The Sunday Papers
on Off the Ball.
27th of April 2025. Welcome along to the Sunday Paper Review. Adrian with you today. Delighted to say I'm joined in studio by Jackie Shiels, former Ireland Rugby International, World Cup semi-finalist, head coach of Navan Rugby Club, and alongside her is journalist Declan Lynch of the Sunday Independent. Folks, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Just been establishing that neither of you have been looking at we're looking at Eubank Ben last night, so
strangely
it'll be a boxing free zone over the next while. An unbelievable, incredible spectacle. That's the end of our Eubank Ben content on this slot.
I'll look at it later.
Yeah, it's really very much worth checking out. Needless to say, given the time that it was on yesterday, even there's very little to know writing about it in the papers today anyway. So, but worth mentioning off the top. Give people a flavour of what's happening across the back pages. We'll start with the Mail on Sunday, and it's Orange Appeal is how they go. Armagh show their class to edge out Tyrone in a clonus thriller. A late point by a delighted Rory Grugan, as you can see there, a late free indeed from very close range, giving the All-Ireland champions the win. Mullins, it's just incredible to match O'Brien. Willie Mullins, dumbfounded, says Dominic King at Sandown Park after an astonishing day at Sandown, enabled him to emulate the legendary Vincent O'Brien with a second UK Trainers Championship. That's the Mail on Sunday. The Sunday Times for a Super Sar. Forward strikes twice as Palace stroll to FA Cup final, beating Villa 3-0. Celtic clinch record equalling 55th title, and Brendan Rodgers very much afterwards saying that he's going to be around for the 5 in a row tilt next year. The Sunday Independent, Dublin and Wexford don't do boring, it turns out. Dublin on the double, Blues defeat Wexford to make it 2 wins from 2 in Leinster, and a great photograph there, Rory O'Connor from Wexford reaching out for the ball. And Cunha committed to Wolves as United wait. The Ipswich relegated while Liverpool need draw for the title, writes Sonny Badwell inside. Lots of writing obviously on that topic today, which we're going to kick off with in just a couple of moments. The Sunday World has Red Letter Day. Liverpool ready for the party before they tried to spoil United Cunha deal, writes Kevin Palmer inside. And Ida, we want to win more after Celtic's victory. I'm here for 5, says the Sun today. Boss Brendan's title vow after they beat Dundee United 5-0. And Brendan Rodgers saying that he is going to be 200%. He said he's going to be around next season no matter what happens. And it's Palace in Wonderland. I like that one after their 3-0 win over Villa. Fine by Geezer as well. The thoughts of Kieran McGinney after their 1-point win over Tyrone yesterday. Writes Jason Byrne inside. That is the Sun. The People. We love you. Yeah. There's a lot of Liverpool fans, including one very close to me here, who are having a lot of this morning. Liverpool fans prepared to greet Slot as one of their own as they stand on the brink of Prem title glory. Amorim, my shout to kick Rashford out. Ruben Amorim insisted he was right to kick Rashford out, even though it turns out he can play football. Pep wants the FA to look north. Claims some FA Cup semi-finals should be played in the north. So the range of things that I want to hear Pep Guardiola talk about today, where the FA Cup final is played. It doesn't feature on the bingo list. Lastly, we'll go with the Mirror. Slot's just champion. Cop boss needs a point today to win the Prem and become an honorary Scouse. So they go with the vernacular on the back page of the Mirror there. And Rodgers, I'm not going to quit, while Orchard takes down Hands at the Death. So that is what's happening across the back pages today. And I mentioned a bit earlier on in a separate platform how privileged we are to have both of you in today. One on the back of the Six Nations, as disappointing as that was, and the other on the day of a coronation.
Well, a suggested coronation.
Listen, come on now.
Well, so there's only one complexity about it, or one slight sort of issue, which is Tottenham are the team they're playing today, and Tottenham, like the most Spursy thing ever in the history of the world would be for them to win today. So they will almost certainly do that. Right? Tottenham beat City 4-0 at the Etihad earlier this season. And now at the time we thought this was Spurs, a new era of greatness for Spurs, but in fact it was just the start of an era of destruction for Manchester City. There's loads of pieces about this sense of anticipation with Liverpool. Like they've all these events organised, but they don't mention what they're about, type of thing. You know what I mean? There's like in a piece by Rory Smith in the Sunday Indo. You know that there are these big sort of shows almost. You know, with interviews. Kelly Dalglish interviewing Rafa. Jurgen has been sort of thereabouts, but nobody actually says why they're going to be doing this, other than just a celebration of life and football. So
should happen every year, really.
Yeah. So it's nobody is in their right mind would actually just say that they've won the league, even with 1 point to be got against Spurs, because this is football and this is Spurs. But it has been there's a lot of sort of gymnastics, mental gymnastics around this whole league campaign, and people trying to figure out, are they any good? Is this Liverpool team any good? I mean, they win nearly all their matches, but are they any good, right? And the reason for this is that, obviously there are unusual things to the season. City, for some bizarre reason, have just lost their aura. They've lost it. There's a piece, I think, by Jim White, in which he points out that players who've left City include Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers, Liam Delap, and Alvarez, who's now with Atletico. Something is wrong about that. It's almost like when Spurs, the aforementioned Spurs, once had Luka Modric and Gareth Bale playing for them. But
something doesn't fit.
And then thought it would be a good idea for it to maybe sell them, right? So, the overwhelming reason that Liverpool have won the league is that they have the best player more or less in the world now, which is Mo Salah. And there's been very, oddly enough, little enough attention paid to that, because everyone else is getting confused, trying to think, why are they? It's very strange. They get a new manager in and you don't expect them to win that. Everyone thought they'd come fourth. And they forget the most blindingly obvious thing is that Mo Salah is one of the best, I would say, ever to play the game. I would be thinking of him up with like Messi and people like this, except Messi didn't have to play in the Premier League every season, right? He's a wonderful, magnificent player, one of the best of all time. And once you have that, it's, nobody else has that. And sort of people can engage in all sorts of, rationalizations of why Liverpool are doing. They've got Van Dijk and they've got Alisson. These are three great players. I always think one of the great templates of football was the England team that won the World Cup in 1966, which had 8 very good players and 3 great players, which, in my opinion, would be Bobby Charlton, Bobby Moore and Gordon Banks. In an odd sort of way, Liverpool have like 8 very good players and 3 great players. And that will bring you a long way, particularly when other teams are maybe not quite there. But I mean, Arsenal have no reason to be sort of complaining about any of this. They had a great chance this season, and again they didn't do it. Whereas Liverpool have whatever extra bit of genius people like Salah bring to it. He'll get the second goal in a difficult away match against Bournemouth. That's what it's all about, And
at Messi and Ronaldo's level, actually,
I think so.
Genuinely,
I definitely think so. He has won the league kind of on his own, right?
But as an individual, technically, he's not as good as them.
Well, they're very different players. Do you know what I mean? He is. I would argue with that, actually. Messi probably is just such a one-off genius that he's incomparable. But I would certainly put Salah with Ronaldo. Absolutely, yeah. Ronaldo has great particular attributes, but there's things Salah can do that he can't really. Do you know? But they're both great players, obviously.
He's sometimes let down by a touch, and that's the sort of, if you were to be, I feel horrible criticising Mo Salah today.
No, I don't think there's any debate about this anymore. Like, he's been there now for 8 years. He has done it again and again and again. He just scores loads of goals and makes loads of goals all the time. There's nothing else you can do, And I sense as well, you see any of these kind of little background films of Liverpool, he seems to be very, very much a leader as well. I get the sense that one of the things that Slot, and I'm only guessing now, and these are just impressions you get, but I get the sense that Slot particularly enabled him and Van Dijk to kind of run things to a certain extent, that they were senior players. They knew the place better than he did in a way, and he was, if you like, sensible enough to just say, to give them more authority and, you know, you don't see Mo maybe tracking back as much as he used to, but doesn't matter because he scores a goal in every game or 2 goals in every, and makes goals. And, you know, I don't see how you can't regard him as one of the greatest ever to play the game. There's nothing really. I don't see any weaknesses as such in his game of any significance, and he's such fantastic.
Well,
even
his
attitude,
numbers are sensational.
His whole persona is magnificent.
He's definitely somebody you can look up to. That maybe at least one of those other 2 players you've mentioned probably could be challenging in that regard. His numbers are sensational. Sometimes his technical touch at times is not quite that of the as you might say top level, but his numbers are sensational. He's a very likeable person. He's doing huge amounts, if not the most amount of any player in that Liverpool team to contribute to what will now be a second Premier League title. So it is difficult. I take those points. John Aldridge is somebody we should mention. He's in the Sunday World today talking about the you mentioned about like why are Liverpool winning titles. He says, I've seen a few critics say that this has been a second-rate Premier League season and Liverpool have been lucky to cash in on every other team falling away, but that's total nonsense. Fans of rival clubs might be jealous of Liverpool's success and think they can have a dig at this title and belittle it in some way, but their arguments are ridiculous. No one was saying that the standard of the Premier League had dropped. Manchester City were running away with it over the last few years. So stop this nonsense talk and give Liverpool the credit that they're due.
And another thing as well in the bigger picture of this, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and it just suddenly struck us. This is only the second time Liverpool have won the league in 35 years. It's incredible, right? All of us have this impression that Liverpool are constantly up there competing on the top teams in the world and all this kind of stuff. Twice in 35 years. How have we endured all this terrible suffering? I ask myself. The scale of our suffering is immense and must be, and we sort of endured somehow through all this. Yeah. But I think City being what they are and the whole 115 charges and everything has fundamentally sort of twisted everything. I mean, it really, Klopp's team won the league, about 3 times without actually being given the trophy, and I think people will always sort of feel that. And it's mad that Klopp has only officially won a league title, but most of us would give him another 2 at least, But because Liverpool were you were competing with City and the only team able to compete with City at the, in their condition, people got the impression that they were in a way more successful than they actually have been. So it is an amazing thing that, not since 1990, and the COVID one also, doesn't quite sit in the same way because it was done almost behind closed doors. Even though that was the Klopp's great team and absolutely deserved it. But it's kind of weird.
A few Champions Leagues thrown in there does.
Yeah, sure. But even the 2005 Champions League, which was a complete madness, right? In the whole day-to-day struggle, which is like what the way most of us approach football, it's been an awful long time since they've actually won the thing, or there's such a huge span of time. So it is remarkable stuff, and if they don't get it done today, they will hopefully before the end of the season. Yeah,
well, it is that, like you mentioned at the start, what's the opposite thing you expect of Tottenham today? Well, that's probably what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, I'd never trust them, good or bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's who they are.
Sorry, just pick it up there in Aldridge's comment. It's interesting that Liverpool might win the Premiership with less points than Klopp lost. I think Klopp had 90 plus last season and couldn't get a championship, but they're going to win it this year, maybe 80, early 80s, low 80s.
And now they could eventually rack up, 80, 81. But Klopp didn't. Klopp was it 99?
Something like that, I think, yeah.
And City got 100. Insane stuff.
Insane.
But we look at the teams that are doing better. Like we talked earlier, Bournemouth doing better, you got Nottingham Forest doing better. And then you have the greats of the Manchester United not doing so well. So teams are getting points against the bigger teams that in the past wouldn't have happened.
Oh, yeah. There's more depth in the league. There was that whole thing for years. Remember, teams would go up to Old Trafford in Fergie's time, already beaten, and happy to be beaten. Tottenham were great at that. They'd always lose 2-0 to United up there, and nobody was even unhappy about it. That's gone to some extent. That the
so-called underdogs are no longer there. Like Newcastle as well have come out this year
Aston Villa.
Well, I'm a Villa fan.
Okay.
Massive Paul McGrath fan. So yeah, although they weren't great against Crystal Palace, but yeah, they're doing well.
They're flying it.
Yeah, they are doing really well. So it's good to see, though. That's what you want to see in the competition, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to see like the likes of Bournemouth going up to Old Trafford and winning 3-0, such things were never in our consciousness, you know, for years. You know, it just couldn't happen, and it suddenly starts happening. So that there is that. I think that people are dealing with that as well. Like that whole the in the middle of the league, you know, sort of say from like 4th to sort of 15th. There are a lot of good teams, like, you know. I mean, Fulham were good.
There's a lot of like traditionally average teams who are being very good, and a lot of traditionally very good teams who are being decidedly average, and it's definitely condensed the whole thing. On the Klopp, like the connection between Klopp and the fans and Liverpool, and like it seemed to be this charismatic two-way street, that like a bond that could never be broken. It was a Premier League, a Champions League, and an FA Cup. So, you know, and there was some other trophies thrown in there, obviously, for good measure. So we'll, you know, today could be the day, obviously, where Slot adds that one, and there's a potential here. You know, that this could. Listen, who knows? You know, we tend to get very carried away with, like, we're looking at the evidence, what we're seeing right now. Liverpool are going to go on and dominate this thing for the next 10 years. Traditionally, that's not the way it works. But like, he could, not easily. He could be in a position to threaten Klopp's trophy. Trophy gathering, let's say, and I know you feel slightly, you've already said that maybe that trophy cabinet actually has a couple more trophies in it than it actually does.
There is the real one and the
But your sense of that sort of, like, there'll never be another one like him. Oh, here's another one just like him, but less charismatic.
Well, the great example of Liverpool is Shankly, you know, who built the empire and was far less theoretically successful in terms of trophies than the people who came after him, all of whom were regarded initially as just sort of backroom people who, you know, had some, you know, unspecified role in the whole thing and just took over. And obviously the foundations that he'd laid were so strong that they were able to just carry it on. But a lot of it, I think, is kind of just common sense, you know. If you think of the people like Bob Paisley, in a way, they're a bit like Slot in the sense that they didn't seem to have a huge ego themselves. You know, they were quite sort of regular blokes to some extent, and sort of, I'm only doing my best here type of thing. You know, like if someone like you know, Joe Fagan and these guys, they're very humble sort of people, and they kind of knew they were in the shadow of the Messiah, if you like. You know, but and likewise, you know, the Messiah is still there somehow. But like Slot was, you know, intelligent enough to realise that he wasn't going to get anywhere trying to be a huge big personality. He wasn't, and that is similar to how it worked in those other days, when it was like they managed to get that continuity by not forcing the issue, you know, except in the really crucial things, like, for God's sake, just sign good players, you know, really simple things, you know, like signing John Barnes and people like this. So just really great choices
that
like
helps.
that. Yeah. And ultimately all this kind of you know, the simplicity of these things is what strikes you as well. The simplicity of a great player like Mo Salah, you know, the simplicity of just not signing bad lads, you know. That I think was the thing with Klopp, that like their personality was quite important, i.e., you know, no bad lads, and that just simple things like that you create an atmosphere around the place, and you know, that you know, that'll get you a long way, just not doing stupid things.
The All Blacks no dickheads rule is like, it's just a never-ending gift that keeps giving.
It's so profound.
But even they themselves have left it behind them. Riyad Al-Samari says obviously there's the Liverpool stuff, and we shall see how I'm sure a lot of people will be listening to this after the fact today, when Liverpool have been crowned champions, Declan, and all this is in the rearview mirror. But yeah, Riyad Al-Samari has a piece in the Mail on Sunday today. It's sad that winning a trophy won't save Ange the evangelist, but not wrong, he says. Like, this is one that I don't know about you guys, but certainly every time I see another Ange Postecoglou press conference where he's got that hangdog look and they're coming off the back of something else you didn't expect happening, it can be at times a hard watch. But there was Riyad Al-Samari brings up the point about like Tottenham going after Slot, in fact, and missing out on him at Feyenoord.
Yeah. I didn't know this.
The sliding doors moment was I looked at it until I read the piece, and he said wasn't so much a sliding doors moment as a walk into the glass.
He was already gone, was he?
He was gone, and Tottenham were basically, as he said, not willing to foot the bill for him.
Yeah.
And
it came down to how willing were Spurs to prize him away from
not that.
They weren't that
not that much. What should Tottenham do about Postecoglou if he mitigates the shambles of domestic season with a victory in the Europa League? This is the question that everybody's asking themselves, and nobody quite knows the answer, other than there's a bit of the Daniel Farkas about it. We'll get Leeds promoted and you probably still won't keep your job. I'm sorry, it's actually not like that at all. They're, now that I've said that out loud, these things are not the same things. But Ange Postecoglou,
clearly he has to go. Like, I mean, there's no question. I mean, they're appalling. I mean, Spurs are just terrible. Having said that, they may well win 3-0 today, but that's not good. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, in fact, it's the worst sign. Actually, it's like Manchester United. The worst thing that can be said about Manchester United is that sometimes they're kind of good. Yeah. You know, like the meaning of their lives now is trying to damage Liverpool. Everton used to have that role and still do, but like, you know, how can we inflict some damage on Liverpool, right? United have now become Everton, but sometimes, you know, they get a draw against Liverpool and it's all kind of, that was a great performance there, you know. The human mind is a strange thing. Was that Bruno Fernandes or something after that match? One of their players, the human mind, who knows the mysteries of the human mind, which means, like, you know, sometimes they're at it and sometimes they're not, and that is completely anathema to any sort of idea of how you should be doing these things. Like, you know, you can't be. But the whole Spurs sort of phenomenon is extraordinary. I can't get past the fact that they used to have Modric and Bale, right? They've had magnificent players over the years, and they have, you know, with almost genius, managed to sort of avoid whatever success they might have by, you know, sort of, you know, carefully getting rid of, you know, the way other players, they carefully nurture the seeds of growth and all this. The Spurs nurture the seeds of destruction with the same kind of care and attention to detail. And I mean, I love watching them. They're fantastic to watch. But if you're a Spurs fan, I mean, I want Ange to stay in a certain way as an entertainer, and then his great hangdog interviews and his,
he can't even look the interviewer in the face afterwards. He's looking
his
at
contempt for his loathing for them and their silliness and their kind of how they fail to understand the great truths. Right? I love that. I love watching that. But if you're a Spurs fan, like at this stage, you know, I can't understand. I can't, you know, understand how terrible must be.
Life must be
to face every new Saturday, not knowing what the hell is going to happen, if it's going to be like with the win 6-0 or you know, be 3-0 behind after 5 minutes or something.
Riyad Al-Tamari says that failure has many causes. I've used this space previously to document Daniel Levy's defining role in that farce and the shame of a wage bill that is a mile beneath Tottenham's capabilities. But while he tied a hand behind Postecoglou's back, it was the manager's choice to slap himself with the other. Which I thought was a good, you know, a bit of blame for everybody, I think, is kind of the point here. That's it on that side. There's a couple of other football pieces we want to touch on. We'll come to the FAI maybe in a second, but maybe the natural segue here is Tommy Conlon on Gary Lineker in the Sunday Independent today. Match of the day, obviously, is the topic at hand here, and sort of a pundit who is better than we've known for the last 30 years, is I think the kind of the point of Tommy Conlon's piece here. But yeah, I don't know. Match of the day, there's the Lineker piece of this conversation, there's a match of the day piece to it. A match of the day existed at a point, was born at a point where you couldn't but, it was the only place to watch the goals. So that's what you had to go there for that. And if any punditry or like skills of presenting existed outside of that, and they did, then that was a bonus. But I'm not sure what match of the day is really anymore.
I suppose now that you can get access to all the goals on your phone and highlights of many games on tablets, I think I as a child I would have grown up watching matches. I used to look forward to every Saturday night and watch it with my mum and dad and my brother. But nowadays I don't really watch it as much as I would say in the past. And then you had match day 2, then start on a Sunday night as well. But like that, you kind of know what's happened during the day. You can catch up on it much quicker.
So you're looking for something else. That's my view on it. Like, but it hasn't morphed into something else. No. It's kind of the same. Like, they'll show a highlight of a game and then we've 30 seconds to say something about that. And like, if you've just said the most controversial thing that's ever happened, well, we'll just let that sit because we got to get on to sort of Leicester against Bournemouth and show you the thing that you've already seen.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the right answer is because, like, the audiences for it, by all accounts, still seem to be massive. But
I mean, part of it is I think it's like it's a heritage event, you know, like until not so long ago, that a friend of mine who's a broadcaster, the first game of the season, the first match of the day of the season, he used to phone me up at like 29 minutes past 10 and sing the team tune down the phone, like, you know, and perfectly normal thing to do, you know, just to mark
the excitement of it all.
Yeah, but like, you know, just the best part is the theme music, right? It doesn't get any better than that, right? That is a great moment in cultural history, all, you know, and it needs to be celebrated every week. If you just had that, and then sort of, the rest of it seems to just always get sort of more and more meaningless as it goes on. But they don't try to make it interesting, which I think is odd. They maybe they think it is a heritage thing, and you just don't try to kind of argue, or you don't get controversial or any of this thing. Like Tommy makes the point about Gary Lineker, that he's in real life he seems to be constantly making interesting or controversial statements, and particularly now that he's kind of leaving it. But his whole career was based on being kind of more clever than he ever let on. You know what I mean? So he wouldn't be eager to sort of share his brilliance with anybody. He was just like, you know, keeping it very sort of to himself, or you know, was it playing a straight bat, as it were. So you know, the punditry is just awful. I mean, it's kind of boring. I mean, Alan Shearer and Danny Murphy and stuff. There's nothing there, you know.
Or if there is, there might be. It's just that we're never going to find out. Like the format.
You always get the impression that when they're talking to themselves, they have a great laugh. I mean, they always seem to be on the brink of like uproarious laughter at what great crack they're having, you know, and what great crack each of them are. You know what I mean? They sort of, you know, but they're not really going to let us in on it, right? Which is not good really for us.
Not ideal.
But for fear of what might actually be said, though, sometimes, isn't it? It's like if they do say something controversial, how far it goes and what comes back to them.
They're limited a bit by the platform they're on. Yeah,
potentially.
It's a really, the Tommy Connell piece is a very sort of thought-provoking one that I had found myself having an opinion about every single aspect of it, but the one bit that sort of touches on the point that we're discussing here, where Tommy says, you knew that Lineker knew that his pundits were not properly doing their job, and he would blithely sit on the fence anyway, thereby not doing his job either. If every profession is a conspiracy against the laity, as George Bernard Shaw famously remarked, the Match of the Day studio often came across as an old boys club, a cosy clique of ex-players phoning it in, taking the money and ultimately cheating the viewer. Very strong opinion, obviously, and you know, I'm sure the BBC producers who were regularly tuned into this item would refute such an idea. But it did have that vibe about it. It was set up for a reason, almost like religion in a lot of sense. Like it was set up with a particular thing in mind, and most people not a lot of people still subscribe to it, but the people that do are kind of doing it because their parents did.
Oh yeah, there is absolutely just that kind of it's a tradition of our culture almost, you know what I mean, or of Western culture. But I always think that David Attenborough is the person who actually was responsible for Match. He ran BBC Two when Match of the Day started. A lot of people, you know, when he eventually dies, if he eventually dies, you know. I intend to point out that, you know, here's the man who his great achievement was he basically gave the world Match of the Day. Oh, and he made a few wildlife programs as well, you know, just as a little PS
aside,
right?
Yeah.
But so that's how you know strong it is as a sort of kind of a heritage thing, but.
Now, I will say my mum watches it religiously. She loves
Really? Okay.
Yeah, she's a huge Man United supporter, struggles at the moment with they're going, but every Saturday night she will, wherever we are, I've got to go home for Match today. Like, she loves it. So there's that generation that, I suppose, maybe that generation that don't look up the scores during the day, don't look at the phones during the day, and don't have access to the Skies and whatever, the TNTs or whoever's broadcasting games. So, you know, as you said, like maybe the commentary or the punditry isn't great, but for people that just want to watch the games and enjoy the soccer, it's a nice way to do it. But I'd say they're bound by what they can say and can't say as well on that show.
I'm sure that's an aspect of it, and like it turns out, Gary Lineker's loads of interesting opinions about stuff that happens in life, and like he's a fully formed human being and all that sort of stuff. But you just never get the sense of that. Anyway, interested in people's opinion on the Match Today watchers. It's still scratch an itch for you. Do get in touch. Right, there's a couple of other football pieces. One other big football narrative, let's call it, that's across the papers today that we're going to get into, and then we're going to get onto the rugby, and we might come back. There's an Alan Sheehan piece that we might come back to a bit later on as well. But the other one is just all the writing, as you might have expected, for the week that was in it with the outgoing Chief Football Officer of the FAI, Marc Canham. Obviously that news during the week. There's a lot of writing about that across all the papers today, really. You've Dan McDonnell in the Sunday Independent, Mark Gallagher writing about it in the Mail on Sunday. Eamon Sweeney in his piece in the Hold the Back page in the Sindo does not spare the whip. I think how we might summarise that in its entirety on Marc Canham. Maybe the most interesting piece is the one from Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times. Corell left facing the heat with departure of Canham from the FAI. There's one aspect of this that we might touch on initially and then come to the meat of it, but definitely Tommy Conlon has a good bit of it, and it's touched on here as well, and Dan touched it on his piece in the Sunday Independent. The idea that David Corell, who's the chief executive of the FAI, is now happy to take on a review of Hamer Helgrenson as he sort of, moves towards the end of his current contract, and whether, somebody, a lay person, let's say, like David Corell, who's not in the most exaggerated inverted commas that you can find, a football person, that he wouldn't be entitled to have a view on this, or that he wouldn't be sort of have the ability to assess and take opinion on what sort of job that Hamer Helgrenson has done and emerge with some sort of a verdict. Like, it's not like any of this is secretive work, like that, we haven't seen the fruits of Hamer Helgrenson's. They're televised, twice in every international window, and we know that we've qualified for a tournament or not. And then there are other factors, of course, that Packy Bonner might be able to sort of, and maybe there are others who have a football opinion in Ireland as well that might be able to fill in the blanks. But there is a sense of a non-footballing person, let's call it, like David Corell, being able to carry an opinion or carry out a review like that on a manager. I don't fully understand that thinking, I must admit.
Sure, yeah. I mean, to some extent, this stuff is a kind of a mystery to me. I just wish I knew how you become a kind of chief executive of something like the FAI, because I think I could do that. I mean, there's a quote here from David Corell saying, "Leadership can be setting direction, taking on board opinions and viewpoints, building consensus and delivering action, and that's the kind of leader I am. I pride myself on my desire and ability to collaborate and communicate." Story of my life.
You'd be a similar leader.
Oh, that's me. That's the other thing I'd love to be a director of football.
Right.
The job, it seems to be you sit in the stand, right, and the camera, after about 25 minutes of the game, the camera, shows you. And you're there looking very solemn, very serious, like a kind of very rich. And I can do that. It brings out the Yosser Hughes in me.
Yosser Hughes. There won't be a lot of people who get that reference, I suspect.
Well,
it's a job.
It's an old series called Boys from the Black Stuff, written by Alan Bleasdale. It was a drama series on BBC in which this character Yosser Hughes keeps going around and saying, "Giz a job, I can do that." There's a little bit of Yosser Hughes when I see this stuff.
I'm beginning to wonder about your leadership skills, Declan. Yosser Hughes is your go-to. The other thing that this touches on, the Paul Rowan piece, is about some inside detail, fresh details, as Paul Rowan puts it, about the blame game at senior levels of the FAI over the botched handling, as he puts it here, the changing of the Ireland women's manager. And there's a decent bit in this quote, but there's some detail in it that I wouldn't want to sort of gloss over or even summarise. So I'll just give you the piece here as much as I can in its entirety. Paul Rowan says the women's manager Eileen Gleeson and Colin Healy were told late last year that their contracts weren't being renewed, despite previous assurances of the contrary, which Healy said he received. After Canham informed Healy by telephone that he was being let go, Corell then texted Healy thanking him for his services. Corell added that he understood that Healy had received an offer from elsewhere and that he couldn't turn that down. Healy pointed out that in fact he had been relieved of his duties by Canham and now needed to go looking for work elsewhere. Canham then got involved, claiming that Corell's message had in inverted commas, quote here, confused things, which is unfortunate. Carell later said that Healy had misinterpreted his remarks, but rather it's a case that the chief executive expressed himself badly or was misinformed about what was going on in relation to Healy's departure. Carell expressed regret last week about what had happened, saying there had been a miscommunication, but it was an honest misunderstanding. And Paul Rowan writes, the matter is particularly sensitive as Healy's wife Kelly died last year from cancer, and he's increased parenting duties while also seeking the right employment. As a permanent member of staff, Gleeson remains in the employment of the FAI, but is not fulfilling any role and is believed to be considering measures of her own. So there's an awful lot of sort of new detail in there, and botched communication, I think, is at the root of an awful lot of it.
Yeah, I suppose you talk with the leadership capacity there and communication. Clearly, things weren't communicated. The Irish women's setup has been a bit confusing for the last couple of years. Obviously, Vera got into the World Cup, and I suppose from that point of view, they did really, really well. People weren't happy with the performances and the style of football that Ireland played there. Kind of happens repeatedly, isn't it, when you're unsuccessful away from home? But like the group they had, they came back. Vera was let go, and Eileen Gleeson came in. I know Eileen Gleeson was working with the FAI prior to that. I think she had a development role with the youth. I think she was doing very, very well at that job, from what I hear. And then I'm sure when she took on the senior job at that time, when they'd no one to take it over, or an interim coach, I'm sure there was negotiations or contracts made that she would have a job within the FAI when she came back. So that might explain why she has a post still with them. Obviously, it's unsure of what she's doing. But I had read about the Colin Healy stuff. I think he had been offered a job and he had turned down other posts.
Cove, I think it was, yeah.
And I think a lot of the players were disappointed. I know Denise Sullivan spoke out about it, about how disappointed she was because they really valued him involved in the squad. So, look, it goes back to what you said there about communication, leadership. Clearly, things weren't communicated. And, you know, from his point of view, he obviously turned down other posts and other jobs. It's terrible, the situation he is with, you know, losing his wife and having the children. So all that uncertainty can't be good for him and his family. Yeah,
I think the first mistake is kind of forgivable in the sense that it was miscommunication, but it was the second one where they came out and just showed a lack of empathy towards him, I think, was the thing that really lost an awful lot of people. One last bit on it, just from Marc Gallagher in the Mail on Sunday, where he says here, perhaps we shouldn't know who the next CFO is, the Chief Football Officer, just for clarity. As Damien Duff pointed out recently, in a properly functioning football association, nobody should know who the Chief Executive or the Technical Director are. That doesn't diminish the significance of the role. This is still the most important job in Irish football, and the FAI must get it right this time.
Yeah, sorry, but I do agree it needs to be someone that knows football. Like I read an article there about the Irish landscape is very interesting when it comes to soccer, you know, with all the other sports we have. So it is important that it's someone that knows football, understands football, has an interest in the football as well, because you said director of football, they're trying to improve football in this country. It's not all about the business and the marketing and all that. If we get the football right, and if we get the right players on the pitch, and we get the pathways correct, in all sports, the sport will sell itself and the sport will deliver later on. But if we don't get that right, then we're just flogging a dead horse, really.
Yeah, we wouldn't be having any of these conversations really if there were about, like, you know, 5 really top players playing for the Republic. You know what I mean? If it doesn't take much really, but we haven't quite got there, and as a result, all the conversation is about, like, you know, bureaucracy to some extent. You know.
Maybe we don't have the players because the bureaucracy isn't right, I suppose.
I know it's a chicken and egg thing.
I don't know. It's like a conversation we've had too much, and I do understand it's like not the most exciting conversation.
Duffer's right though in all these things.
Shouldn't know who they are.
If you know, ideally, none of these people would ever be known about or heard about. They just like the thing. You know, there was nothing again with Liverpool over the years. Nobody knew who was the chairman or the chief executive, or I don't know if there even was a chief executive. But
what about that point? Sorry, the last one. Marc Gallagher makes a point at the end about it being the most important role in Irish sport. Like, that title seems to sort of change depending on the week. Diminish the significance of the role. This is still the most important job in Irish football. Sorry.
Football, yeah, good. I'm glad he said football, not sports, because we have a couple of other important sports as well. It is a very important role, but it's we talked about it, it's like that director, but unless we get the product at correct at that senior level, but underage in the grassroots, and like we're finally getting the League of Ireland to a standard where it's good and it's enjoyable when we can watch it, and players staying in the country, but it's all happening a bit late, so it's very difficult to have a product if you haven't got the pathways in place first. Yeah.
Lots of comments coming into us on the YouTube channel. You can watch it every week, 11:30 on a Sunday. on the Off the Ball YouTube channel, the Sunday Paper Review. We're here with Declan Lynch, Jackie Shiels, going through the back pages. That's most of the football. We do have a couple of other bits to get to that we will touch on before we wrap in just a bit. But we want to move on to the rugby. Obviously, the curtain has come down at the end of the Women's Six Nations, and even though Ireland finished in third position on 11 points, it's a 10-point gap to France in second, and then it's a full 17 points to England, who, in fairness, just scraped through against France in the end yesterday, 43-42. Sinead Kissan's piece in the Sunday Independent is the piece that I went to today. Turbulent end can't mask real progress. Beeman gets a reminder of Ireland's flaws and the need for greater depth in painful defeat to the Scots after a season of positives for his new look side. Frustrating day out, Jackie, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's the word. It's just really, really frustrating. A number, including myself, of ex-players, we were really excited about the squad, and we still are really excited about the squad, but I just think yesterday it's just such an anticlimactic end to what promised to be a really successful Six Nations. We haven't won 3 games in the Six Nations since 2017, and we were on the brink of it against a Scotland team who had been struggling. And I just think a couple of things. Obviously, we lost Erin King there before the Wales game, and we were fine without her. The girls stepped up and had a convincing win against them. We lost Aoife Wafer then through the week, and they're your 2 star players, World 15's Player of the Year, and then you had Breakthrough Player of the Year, World 15 Team of the Year. So they're phenomenal players and difficult to replace. But I just wonder, was there just one too many other changes made to an already changed team? And I think Scott Beeman's done a wonderful job, and he obviously has a plan. And we're always talking about building depth, and we have to build depth in the squad, and that's what he's trying to do. But I just think if you had those couple of enforced changes and then to put other changes on top of it, was it just one too many? Now, you flip that, we had some things that happened yesterday would never happen, to lose Dorothy Wall in the first 10 minutes, an Achilles injury, 2 HIAs, you have your captain, Adele McMahon, going off, and then you have Enya Breen at centres going off, and then suddenly you lose Tricky, and that's 3 of your back row that normally start are gone. So there are things that he can't can't plan ahead for, but it's just so disappointing. I think the most disappointing thing was, although we lost, we probably could have won it. There was a couple of things that happened, just on the 40-minute mark, and I won't pick on players because obviously in a game situation there's lots of things happening. But Ireland were up at the 40-minute mark. A ball on our own 22. Easy thing to do is just kick it off the pitch, isn't it? But we didn't get it off the pitch. Scotland then turn around, they score a try, and they go in half-time, they're leading. So there are little things, and we'll talk about game management, we'll talk about the youth, talk about how many games are getting played, but we have a professional programme now. We can't keep making excuses for ourselves. We know, Dana knows as 10 that the clock is in 40, we're under pressure, just get the ball off the pitch. And if Dana doesn't know it, there's other girls around her should be telling her that kind of stuff, and I think that's the frustrating thing. We're getting so close, and then we're just still making the same mistakes. And we have a professional programme there for 30 months now. We're in the High Performance Centre. The girls are getting quality training. He's an excellent coach. They've got the best of everything going on, and it's just frustrating when we just can't see off a game like that. We should have done yesterday.
Yeah, as Sinead points out, as you say, sort of over a year into the new 15s programme, gone from 10th in the world to 5th, 9 games, 5 wins and 4 losses, increased investment, quality coaches that are there. It's all good except for, It's a bit like, I suppose, if this happened in the men's, would we be looking for the silver lining, or would you just kind of go, no, this isn't good enough? And there's definitely silver lining. There is so many positives that come out of this campaign. They've scored more tries this campaign than they've ever scored in a Six Nations before. And not just forward tries. We've had back tries. We've had tries from all over the park. So that's really positive. We ran France close. We ran England close for the first half, but that's always been the situation. We've always they were our big games, France and England. Can we get closer? I genuinely had felt we'd put ourselves away from Scotland, Wales and Italy. And unfortunately yesterday then we just kind of got ourselves dragged back into that best of the rest. And yeah, we are best of the rest. We finished third, but I would have hoped we would have been a much more consolidated third than when we have come out as. Now look, there's things from that. We've got new girls, new capped, you had Jane Clossy getting capped yesterday. You had Aoife Curry getting capped yesterday, and that's all about building for what is eventually what this year is about, and that's the World Cup in September. But I think what yesterday just showed us is our depth chart just isn't where it needs to be. And we have 2 games now in the summer. We have, I think, Canada, and we have Scotland ahead of the World Cup, so that'll be games to get girls game time, and obviously that's going to improve things. But it's just, can we get those gaps
filled quicker.
And maybe they'll look back at that game and go, that was the one where we realised that boom, boom, boom. And maybe that's a good thing in the over. But like as we sit here on the day after the game, I think it's right that we're critical of the whole thing. And like you're off to the Aviva, I think this afternoon.
Yeah, to watch the AIL finals, yeah.
And those two players you mentioned, we had Fiona Hayes on Wednesday night, and it must have been around the time that she had just found out or was really disappointed or was about to find out maybe that the two players weren't going to be available. But like, what's your view on that? Should they have been left off? And
like Fi's a good friend of mine. I roomed with her at the World Cup in 2010, and I actually texted her that night, and she's just disappointed. Like, as a club coach, you spent your year preparing and trying to get your squad to that pinnacle of women's rugby at club level, which is the AIL final in the Aviva, which is wonderful. And then you get told that these two girls have been taken out, and it's hard because you want to be really proud of your players. Like, they've got to where they want to get as individuals, and you want to celebrate that as a club, that you've got these two girls playing for the national team. That's wonderful. But you're always kind of like, that's Fee now without two of her starting 15 and potentially three because one of them was on the wider squad. So again, it comes back to that kind of communication. Like, is it mad that the AIL women's finals are on the day after an international game? Like, to be honest, actually, the whole of Leinster women's cup finals were on yesterday. So I actually had to catch up on the match because we were at a finals day. So it's just timing, isn't it? Like, so
well, given the thread, so if it was the men's game where there's no connection between the club game and the international team,
that's
you'd
okay.
say fair enough.
Yeah.
But it's ludicrous, beyond ludicrous, that like it's a possibility we might need players from that game that will schedule one after another.
Well, you look at Beth Buttermore there, who was in as the kind of cover hooker for Ireland there. I went to the two games. I went to the one in Belfast and the one in Cork, and I saw her on the sideline, and obviously she's not part of the 23-man squad, but she's part of the wider squad, and she's there and she's participating in training, but she's getting no game time. And today Railway will play UL Bows, and there's a game where she would be needed for 80 minutes, and is that 80 minutes not more important than her standing on the sideline watching games? Like, we talk about game time. Game time is so important for these players. Okay, it might not be an international level, but this is the pinnacle of our club game. And there's two clubs who are going to be missing players on a day that they would genuinely need them. So but it all comes back to a few other things. Like, I know I'm not blaming the AIL organisations or the whatever. I know that Six Nations games came out a bit late this year, and you never know exactly what weekends are going to be on. So there is an impact to that. Like, our season plan comes out in kind of like end of summer last year, so like June, July, we get our season plan, and you don't have the fixtures for the Six Nations at that time. So it's kind of come back to that whole thing said about the egg and the chicken, what comes first. It's hard to plan around things you don't know that are going to come.
Yeah. There was a narrative that had sort of come up during the week about the France game being the first game in, and that, like, you know, if only we would have had that in round 3 or 4, then we might have had a better chance. But in hindsight, 43, 42 suggests maybe it was the right time.
I thought that as well. Like, the way Ireland had built, like, so obviously they had a really good performance against Italy away, really good performance against Wales away, good first half against England. Like, would it have made a difference had we got France a little bit further down the line? But I don't know where that French performance came from yesterday. You know, like, because I'd been saying during the week, you know, like, I was shocked by France v Italy. Like, Italy, literally, only for Italy kicked the ball away in the last 8 minutes, they were going to try and get a win against France. So France obviously came to play yesterday, you know, 43-42 in Twickenham Stadium. And that will be unbelievable for France going into the World Cup. Like, to know that that's where the World Cup final is going to be on, in Twickenham, that they know they can test France. And France went down to 14 players at one point during that game for a high tackle. So, yeah, I was very surprised at the France result, to be honest with you. But you know what? I think England need that as well. Like, England have probably had it too easy in Six Nations games. So, you know, that's the first time England have been pushed hard since obviously they lost the World Cup final to New Zealand.
One thing that I know Declan cares deeply about is the existential threat to the Irish rugby provincial game. So we should mention that as well. A bad weekend all around, it must be said, for Irish rugby. I saw one stat from somebody whose name escapes me, but I think I might have it written here. Had yesterday that was like 2015 was the last time that all 4 Irish provinces had been defeated in one round of Russ Petty is his name. Brilliant name for somebody who's involved in rugby stats. But that all 4 had been beaten in one round of URC or Celtic whatever games. And so it leaves us, as we sit here today, with Leinster top of the billing as we sort of get into the crunch time with a couple of games left in the regulation season, and you have Munster, Ulster and Connacht all outside the top 8. Like, it is a concern.
Yeah, like, obviously Leinster rotation sent a weaker squad to Scarlets. I'm sure they assumed they could win that game, but that has caused a little bit of a mishap for the rest of the teams. So I think Scarlets have jumped into 7th, haven't they? and it puts Munster, when Munster losing to Cardiff, was them in ninth. I know that Ulster were under pressure anyway to get into the last 8. In fairness, Sharks, they sent a big squad up there last night. But yeah, it's worrying for the game, because obviously not getting into top 8 doesn't get you into the quarter-final stages, and then you look at Champions Cup rugby, which is then, like, it's. I think we had a conversation last time I was on. It's like, it's about money, isn't it? And the reality is, by not getting into those European competitions, there's less money coming into your, income coming into the clubs, and then you have the option of like getting players coming in. And now with the IRFU, aren't they stating that the provinces have to pay part
40,
of the...
They've gone from 30% to 40% of the centrally contracted
So
players.
that's going to impact them. Like if those provinces aren't getting into European rugby, that's a lot of income they're going to miss out on, and potentially that's going to impact the player selection they can get, and the kind of keeping the players in this country. Yeah,
worrying times. We'll have more on that, Declan. I know you're kept awake nights about that whole thing.
Tell me about it.
Shifty Lad says on our YouTube channel, hasn't been a good season overall, but Liverpool won't care. It's been over in reality for a good while. Nigel O'Sullivan says, as a fantasy Premier League player, love avoiding the results during the day and watching Match of the Day when I don't know the scores. Best way to watch it. Something very nostalgic, says Shane Coughlin, about watching Match of the Day and not knowing the scores beforehand.
That's a great goal. It's a dream we all harbour, and on some days you can actually get to Match of the Day without knowing the scores.
Do you ever do it?
I have done it. Yes, in the last, I can't remember exactly when, but one time in the last, say, 3 years, I managed that, and with great difficulty, obviously. You know what I mean? Because it's almost humanly impossible.
Yeah.
Like the famous Likely Lads episode, there's a legendary episode of Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, in which the two lads spend the day trying to avoid an England. If you hear about an England match, and it's brilliant. It's really it's a famous type of comedy thing. But the punchline was that the game it was supposed to be on Sports Night on the Wednesday, and it was England and Bulgaria, and there was fog in Bulgaria. The match was abandoned.
Oh, no way, after all that. Brilliant.
But spoiler, but it's a great achievement in the modern world to actually not know the results, even a couple of the results of the matches a day.
It is an achievement. Jared Dwyer says OTB considers the Premier League the only soccer trough to drink from. Typical D4 Anglophile view of the great game of soccer. The Premier League is OTB's whole world. Pathetic. Absolutely. And we've just signed our deal there a couple of months back for League of Ireland broadcasts every Friday night. We do League of Ireland podcasts. We do a lot of other stuff. But listen,
Alan Sheehan here.
Don't let the reality get in the way of a bit of a rant there. We'll talk about Alan Sheehan. Were you going to watch the game today, by the way? It was something I should have asked you a bit earlier.
Oh, I'll watch it at home. I need to be in complete control of my environment when I'm watching Liverpool games, to the extent that I find, particularly as one gets older, the nerves are gone. You just I just can't sort of say Liverpool are 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go. I find it very difficult to watch that in real time. I'll kind of pause it.
Oh, would you?
I'll pause it, and I maybe if I'll start speeding it up a bit, and if the other team are crossing the halfway line, I'm not paying Sky to see that. Thanks very much, but Tottenham entering the Liverpool half is not what I'm here for, So I'll get there eventually, but not by sort of real time. And I find it a very useful device.
So what are you doing when it's on pause? Just pacing?
I'm just composing myself.
Yeah. Contemplating life.
I'm thinking how, that something good might be happening.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm actually watching it, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to accept what's in front of me. Whereas at least I have some sense, or the illusion of control, if I can at least sort of control the pace of the game.
The pace of the game.
Director of football.
I
want to watch it with him later. Sit in the house and pause.
Oh, that's brilliant.
As it's going top corner, pause that.
There are certain teams. The Westmeath football team would certainly be one of them for me. That, like, the level of anxiousness that you get from either listening to them or watching it at times, it doesn't feel like it's worth the investment.
Yeah, I know other people who do this. If only I was alone in this. But I mean, friends of mine are like that as well. You know, that they've all sorts of kind of ruses and techniques of avoiding reality and hoping against hope and trying to feel that they have some kind of control over the situation. It's just a human failing, really, you know.
Do you ever get to the point, like, let's say Liverpool are 2-0 down against Tottenham today? I would do this regularly, and I'd go, oh, listen, this doesn't really matter. You know, it's whatever the outcome here, life goes on, and so you have to nearly burst the bubble.
Usually, when you're losing, that's how
correct,
you feel.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there can be that, you know, I don't agree with it. You know,
No.
I don't agree with sort of the sort of there's worse things in the world. You know, it's the last refuge. It really is, like, you know. But you know, it will hopefully. The great thing about the speeding up the screen is that you keep focused absolutely on the scoreline in the top. I remember there was the game against QPR a few years ago, where there was about 4 goals scored in the last minute or something. Remember, there was a crazy game at Loftus Road, Liverpool and QPR, and I couldn't stand it anymore. So I just started speeding it up, and the score kept changing up in the top corner, like some sort of slot machine.
Something's gone wrong with the graphics here. There's not actually been goals.
Yeah, it was like 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2. It was insane, you know.
Oh, you were better off not to have lived through that, you know.
The Man United game last week, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the last 5 minutes. That game was crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. I must try that, actually. It's not something I've thought about before. So we go from that to the opinion section of the Sunday Independent today, in an article here by Declan Lynch. Stable Hands winner was not all right for the betting giant, and the piece actually covers 3 things. It's the 25-year-old stable hand who was hoping and has finally won his 320k from Ladbrokes, and it goes into Mo Salah and ends up at the only place it could go after that, with the Pope.
Yeah, well, the sort of proliferation of gambling in our lives now, inevitably there is a market on the Papacy. You know, the favourite, I think, is 2-1, Parolin.
Right.
Parolin.
You're saying this as if I've got something, I've nothing to come back with here.
Cardinal Parolin, I presume. And there's a few of them are friendless in the market, as they say, at 50-1. But you know, the unusual betting patterns will be noted, I'm sure, if coming from the conclave. I'm sure. Like the great thing about, you know, the gambling corporations now, that they have such technology, they can see anything. They can you know, you watch for signs of addiction. They can, but like the only thing that really kind of gets their attention is if some guy like Dylan, who kind of is a stable hand at Declan Quigley's yard, he, you know, achieved the dream of humankind, which is he had a €30 double on 2 horses that won 320 grand. A magnificent thing, a wonderful, like, it's like the universe has tilted on its axis for once. This world of losing and misfortune for a few brief moments is gone, and they find a way not to pay him. You know, eventually, after he told his story over the week on various like radio programs and the media, and it was heartbreaking. Right, he was describing it was like a life-changing amount of money. He was thinking, you know, he could, you know, buy a house, he could do all these things, right? And you know, how often something like this, how often you lose, how often like sort of he would have bets on it. You know, nobody asked him if there was anything about the integrity of the race. If he loses, right, and then for once the planets align, and he was even thinking of going to the High Court, saying that he couldn't imagine that a judge would favour Ladbrokes over a young lad like himself. You know, you wanted to weep when you heard that. You know, but
there was some question about the integrity of the race.
Yeah, one of the races. One of the races, there was an inquiry by the IHRB into one of the races, and Ladbrokes decided that they were going to wait for the outcome of that. Now, all the other things had happened. I mean, every other bookmaker had paid out on the events. The winner all right had been announced, which is like the kind of universal sign. Winner all right, SP. You know, this. We understand at a deep human level that it's all over then, and you can collect the money, but not in this case. So, you know, there was just this one holdout, if you like, from Ladbrokes because of this one bet, right? And obviously presumably because of this one bet. And yesterday, they kind of decided that after the week of publicity, which they hadn't really engaged in themselves, right? I mean, it was mainly him just telling his own story. They announced that having engaged with the IHRB, they've now decided that in accordance with their terms and conditions that they will pay the bet. So it's great news for him, and it's just a triumph, if you like, of the little guy against the corporation and its ruthlessness. And it's there's a kind of an analogy between this life and I think we all feel oppressed by kind of corporations, and that we have no hope against the might of the big business, and we don't even try, And so he did try. He actually sort of he had a terrible year, and then he said, "What can I do?" He told the story to the media, and it actually worked. So it's a happy ending.
Yeah, and an entertaining read, I would say, for anybody who wants to go
Okay.
You have to point out a couple of times, I'm not joking when I say this, but
Okay.
and the little guy gets the big guy, moves into Mo, and then obviously am I outing you here, Shane? Is this okay information to reveal? Our producer Shane has a few bob on. Who have you got a few bob on? Archbishop of Bologna, Matteo Zuppi. He got at decent odds. What, 7?
But they need 66%, don't they? This is the magic number. They need 66%. Yeah, 66% before the yeah.
He'll be there or thereabouts.
Will he be the Nottingham Forest or will he be the Liverpool?
So just to clarify, you can bet on who becomes the Pope.
Oh, yeah. Yes. There's a lively market there. You know. Yeah.
I must look into it.
Yeah.
Well, now that the Premier League is basically over, that's the only place we can go. Couple of pieces we want to touch on before we wrap. Mentioned Alan Sheehan earlier on. There's a piece by Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times. I don't want to be a celebrity. I want to manage in the Premier League. Alan Sheehan, the Athlone-born manager of Swansea City, on his career goal and why he speaks to his father every day. I have to say this was a story that sort of bypassed me, I must admit. As Alan himself points out later on in the piece that, it's not as if everybody's been paying close heed to my career through the years, but anybody from Athlone would probably be keeping an eye, because there's not an awful lot of people that have come from that town that have gone on to had big football careers. So he's been in my consciousness because of that reason, but doing wondrous things as the interim manager of Swansea City. 23 points from 11 games, including 5 championship wins in a row heading into this weekend. This piece was obviously written because they were about to push even further up the championship table, and then they got beaten by I can't remember who yesterday. But when he took over, they were 17th in the table. They're now like 6 points back from the playoff, and they probably won't get that far. But it looks like the job is to turn down, unless Luka Modric, who's obviously got involved as an investor now at Swansea City, is leafing through his contacts book for a more high-profile candidate.
When I saw this piece, I was suddenly struck by the fact that I'm pretty sure I played under 12 football against his father, Michael Sheehan.
Right.
It was an event I have never recovered from, actually. We were beaten by his team 5-3, having been 3-0 up. A couple of controversial refereeing decisions. But it was the semi-final of the local kind of under 12 league. If we got to the final, we would have played in St. Mel's.
Wow.
Like the Mecca.
Yeah, the Marc Canham.
And the Marc Canham by the Midlands River. And we got beaten, and I'm not bitter about it, but I've never really
not bitter, but I've never got it. In fact, outside, and I know you're not going to repeat it now, you were telling me you remember the name of the referee.
Yeah, but we can't
for legal reasons.
For legal reasons. But no, it was an amazing. His father was a very good player, Michael Sheehan. I'm pretty sure it's the same man. I can see a kind of a facial resemblance,
Right.
So it's great to see it. I mean, he's right that the Athlone hasn't really sent out many world-class footballers, but at the same time, remember a very good player, Dennis Clark, who had a really good career in the League of Ireland. He was a fantastic player. He ran, sort of when I was a kid, he was like, in local football, his team would beat everyone 11-0, that thing, because of him.
Yeah.
So he went over, I think, to a couple of clubs in England at the time, Derby County, maybe Manchester City. I'm not sure exactly. But eventually he played with Rovers and Athlone very, very well, But it's great to see this guy doing well, and he comes from a really good football pedigree, you know.
I'd have you down as like a nippy right back or winger.
I'd be nippy, yeah. More avoiding things.
Would I be right? What position would that be, right?
Yeah, about 11. I would be a number 11.
Okay.
And 12 if that was available. Yeah.
If that was available. Alan Sheehan, as I said, like a lot of people would be maybe peripherally aware, but like a big career. Leicester City, Leeds, Swindon, Notts County, Bradford City, Luton, Oldham, had done a bunch of loan spells as well, but has really been carving himself out a career here. Was briefly in the Premier League with Nathan Jones at Southampton until he got sacked, but has been quietly going about his business there. And like as I said there, it's his job to turn down now. And I don't think they're going to get promotion. I'm not even sure it's mathematically possible anymore, but this is something that we should be keeping an eye on.
And I think Athlone is a good football town. You know what I mean? Always has been. Like, you know, soccer was the main sport there since the Brits, really, I suppose. You know, and probably more people should have come out of it than have done. You know, but like I said, he's a really good football background in his family and all that. So it's great to see it.
Yeah, we should keep an eye on that. Can we talk about Joe Brawley? Was the words out of Declan Lynch's mouth earlier today, and was not a combination of things I expected to contemplate this morning. But Joe Brawley in the Sunday Independent, robot era is over. Long live football. The game that was dead has arisen along with all the emotions. Joe says every player is learning to take risks, is obviously in foot of the new rules, which must have seemed to them at first like jumping off a plane or throwing yourself off a bridge. Hello Gaelic football, hello Gaelic footballers. Just as Jim Gavin planned it, the game can no longer be controlled. A 4-point lead coming into the last quarter used to mean game over. Now it means nothing at all.
Joe was like, I followed a lot of Gaelic football through the eyes of Joe, who you know, varies from just like despair, utter black despair, to elation, and you know, apparently it's a time for elation. So I'm here for that, and that's great.
Yeah, when you say you're here for it, you mean you'll read Joe's pieces every weekend and see nothing in between.
I think the game is more exciting to watch. I do think the 2-pointer, like you look at the Donegal and Monaghan game there recently, the hooter has caused a bit of controversy there. Yeah. That was one thing I didn't like, was the hooter having it had in the women's game previously. I always found it a bit frustrating, the women's game, but the games are tighter. As I said, like a 4-point lead, it's a 2-pointer. More teams going for goals. It's genuinely more exciting to watch, you know, and that's only going to be good for the game going forward as well.
Yeah, he's incredibly positive.
Hopefully then today, you know, Meath might get a few 2-pointers against Dublin. That'd be a wonderful thing.
Well, it's suddenly like a conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the outcome, and actually Colin O'Rourke touches in his piece in the Sun Independent today, may tell how far the mighty have fallen. Dublin are vulnerable, but not enough to lose to Meath. So like there is a conversation. But,
is that written by Colin O'Rourke?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody is that vulnerable. Is that
how vulnerable are UL Bulls today? Was those couple of losses enough to swing it in Railway's favour, or no?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I do see Railway Union winning it. I think the experience they have around the park, and I do think the girls that UL have lost will impact them greatly. I'd like to be wrong. As I said, I'd be close to Fee, and I know she works very hard down there. But I just think with the experience, like, you know, you've got Lindsay Peat there at number 8, and I think Railway have Mary Healy over from Galway, and she's playing there this year. So I just worry that they have a bit more depth. Losing those 3 or 4 players will really hit UL Bows. But as I said, I hope I'm wrong, and I'm looking forward to a good game there in the Viva today. Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting to Fiona as well during the week too. Hopefully she's on the right side of it for the humour, from a humour point of view. What's going to happen?
They'll do it, I think.
Today?
Yeah, to hell, you know. I mean, we
throw caution to the wind.
Yeah, I mean, we try to employ all the juju and all that, but my God, I mean, yeah, they'll do it. This is going to sound kind of strange, isn't it? People do listen to this slot on a Monday. I will, in the same way as I confidently predicted on the 22nd of September that Liverpool would win the league. At this stage, I think I can double down on that and say yeah, it's pretty likely. Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting, even from and there's so many Liverpool pundits, former Liverpool players as pundits now writing today. Jan Malby, Danny Murphy, Chad Aldridge mentioned. There might be one other in the mix there as well, but you know, it feels like today is the first day that people are going, I think they might win it, which is remarkable given that everybody's been. Yeah, it's just I mean, people who follow football or any sport really live in a state of constant dread I think that
Yeah.
everything is going to go horribly wrong. So I think it's quite sensible in that sense. It's only people who don't really care about stuff who say, yeah, sure, no problem.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, so I think if you care at all, you're constantly haunted by dread.
Yeah, it's a good way to end it. Anything we've missed that you want to mention before we wrap up?
I think, God, we got around a lot of...
We covered a lot of bases. Thanks a million, folks. Jackie Shiels, Declan Lynch, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sunday
Thank
Paper
you.
review for today.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.